We get, Victor, is that a lot of people watch porn and very few people are killers, but the logic doesn't work. That because 98% of the population or 99.9 can watch this stuff and not do something violent doesn't mean that it doesn't have relevance in this case. Can you see, though, any reason to admit, even though the titles are very horrific, the wife confesses raping the teacher, could you make an argument that those should come in?
Well, I don't see how you could possibly make an argument they should come in, and for exactly the reason Steve says, it's to make them look bad. Right. Well, you're not entitled to put that kind of character testimony in unless the defendant puts on his own character testimony.
Would you try to get any limiting instruction that the jury ought to have in the way they look at the porn channel information?
Well, I think that Mark will probably ask for that, but I doubt if the judge will do that, because you could do that for every little bit of evidence. You could always ask for limiting instruction, but I think if the judge feels the evidence admissible, it should come in without any kind of a limiting theory. Also on this porn, I don't think that when you order a porn channel, you know what they're going to play. So the fact that these porn movies may have these type of titles that now in
no, these are actually writings that were downloaded. Oh, they're written material and pictures that were on his computer. This has nothing to do with the satellite.
These are things that he actually
downloaded
on purpose.
His material. They were in his hard drive on his computers at the office, and then they confiscated those. It was only later on the 18th of February that they found this stuff about the hardcore porn channels. In terms of arguing she's not coming home, though, Victor, I think it's a pretty good argument that selling the car, trying to sell the house, all of these behaviors, converting the nursery, wedding albums thrown around, all this sort of thing. Now the porn channels, this is not a guy that looks like he expects Lacey to walk back in the door.
It certainly looks that way, and I think the judge probably made the right call. Obviously, it's within his discretion to make this call, so either way he went, what could you say? Yeah. But, you know, the judge may also be looking at the overall case, and he may be influenced by the fact that it doesn't look like it's the strongest prosecution case, and so when it's going to be something close, and the judge is just a human being, he obviously has an opinion about Peterson's guilt one way or the other and how the case is going. So if it's a close call and he may just subconsciously maybe want to help one side or the other, he's going to be, you know, more prone to go that way depending on his own point of view.
Let me go out first to Victor, because Victor, I had heard rumors, I understand you've sort of heard the same thing, that it looks like there's going to be opposition on the part of the defense team, Mark Garagos, to this same jury hearing the punishment phase of Scott Peterson's case.
Yes, that's what I've heard. In fact, I understand that Mark is presently preparing a motion to disqualify this jury and have a different jury impaneled to hear the penalty phase of the case, primarily because of what occurred after the verdict was rendered and all the applause from the people present at the courthouse. He thinks that this has unfairly influenced that jury. You know, they've given a kudo to that jury for the verdict they've rendered, and so therefore it's an unfair jury. It's an unfair situation. It's a pressure situation. And therefore he's going to move, I believe, to have a different jury impaneled.
All right, but we're still talking Redwood, California. He's not asking for a venue change, right?
Well, I don't know if it's so much a venue change. I don't see what the venue would have that much to do with it. I think he wants to get a completely different jury.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, there are certainly instances where a different jury considers the penalty rather than the guilt, because we have appeals in which death sentences have been set aside and a new jury has been paneled. So the concept, I understand that, but the concept of a different jury hearing the penalty phase is not uncommon. I think what I was talking about before was the fact that when the jurors left the courthouse, not what happened inside the courtroom, but when they left the courthouse, of all the people outside screaming and yelling, and that's where I think that Mark is going to play his cards and say that this jury has been improperly influenced. Also, I believe that he's going to be able to bring up the fact that the jury foreman who was let go, I believe that one of the reasons the foreman was let go in this case because he asked to be let go because he was in fear of his safety from the other jurors. I think that may be part of his argument.
Victor, but that's more of an appellate. I mean, I think that goes
well,
right to the heart of the appeal here.
It may be an, wait a second. Joe, it may be an appellate issue, but let's assume for the sake of argument that, in fact, the one juror was intimidated. Right. And this jury has gotten to the extent that they're actually threatening people. If that, in fact, could be proven, don't you think that would be a grounds to set aside?
Well, set aside the verdict, but not to set aside. I don't think the judge would accept, because I don't think the judge would accept that as truthfully. The judge would have to make a finding, a factual finding of that being truthful.
I understand that,
if he found that as credible, I don't think he'd go to sentencing phase. I think if this judge found that this juror was threatened and he was a defense juror and he was threatened,
there would have been a mistrial.
He would set aside the verdict.
Exactly, it would have been a mistrial.
Victor, what else are you hearing about Mark Garagos's absence from the courtroom? I was very, very surprised. Was he out on business in Los Angeles?
Well, he was out in business in Los Angeles. In fact, one of my partners was with him that day on another case, and I believe that Mark was under the impression that the jurors had asked for some religious pastor or something to come to the jurors on Sunday. They were going to do some kind of religious service. So he honestly believed that the jury was not going to return a verdict on Friday. Every indications were that they were going to take the weekend, and therefore he had other business that he had to take care of in Los Angeles. And once he heard that there was a verdict, he was frantic to try to get back to the courthouse.
What time did he get back?
I don't know what time he got back. Obviously, it was after the verdict was announced, I think at 1 o'clock or 1:30 local time. But the point of the matter is, he was shocked that the jury reached its verdict on Friday. He never expected it. Otherwise, he would have never left the area. And he certainly did not avoid going back because he didn't want to confront the situation there. That's totally not true at all. He certainly he's a man of great character in that sense, that he's got a lot of strength, and he wasn't folding under the pressure. So all this criticism for him not being there, I mean, one could say, well, maybe he shouldn't have left because of the possibility of a Friday verdict, but all the indications were, and I think everybody was caught by surprise that the jury reached its verdict on that day.
Well, it's our understanding that there was quite a bit of notice, more than 2 hours, to the participants in the trial, and you can hop on a little jet and get up there in 45 minutes. I don't think you leave Scott Peterson after this kind of trial to stand there by himself. Nevertheless, what also do you know, Victor, about the boat? I am getting so much email. What will happen to Mark Garagos for buying that lot, putting the boat out there, and now I understand the lot's back up for sale, so it was simply for this staged stunt.
Well, I really don't know anything about that event at all. It's hard to believe that Mark would... No, I'm not going to get into that one, Joe. Oh. You can follow that one up.
All right, then what do you think? Forget about any details, but should a lawyer that pulls something like this be sanctioned?
Well, I don't know if it's contempt of court to be sanctioned, but obviously if something like this was done, it was done in extremely poor taste, to say the least.